everybody. My name is Demet Tunc. I lead the Customer Experience Council at the Conference Board. Today, we are going to have the first part of a 3-series webcasts on customer experience and bots. And this is the first part of the series where we're going to talk about AI, machine learning, consumer centricity, and everything around customer experience. Before I introduce you to the content of this webcast and to my speaker, let me update you on a couple of housekeeping rules. During the webcast, you can ask questions through the chat box that appears at the bottom left of your screen. You can download the presentations if you want to. You can also full screen the presentation. At the end of the webcast, we have a very brief evaluation form which we kindly ask you to complete. If you think the content is relevant, you can share the webcast with your colleagues within your network by clicking on the demand button. By joining this webcast, you can also earn CP credits if you type in your name and your email in the small box that is provided. Okay, so today my speaker is Tom de Ruyck. He is a managing partner at Insights Consulting, which is a leading management company, consultancy company, and consumer research company. Tom is passionate about consumers. His mind is all around consumer centricity, customer centricity, and his passion is to advise global brands to be more customer centric. And also innovation is one of the things that he heavily works on. He's an expert in preparing organizations for future thinking, and he's also very engaged with technology and all the innovations happening in the new world. His work has been awarded by some reputable organizations such as American Marketing Association, SMR, CMO Council, USA, and Asia. Welcome, Tom. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. So the topic of today's webcast is Age of Relevance. To start with, what does Age of Relevance mean?
Yeah, there is a lot of change in the world today that affects companies. And I think the main challenge of a lot of organizations today is how to stay relevant, how to use technology to a certain extent that the company is doing the right thing for its customers, how to listen to all the signals of change in the consumer world, in the world of technology, in the world at large, how to actually future-proof your organization, which all comes down to how can you stay relevant. So that's why I call the age we are living in the age of relevance.
Okay, and how can you cope with the pace of technology?
Yes, indeed, which is very important. And like I said, technology plays a very important role today in our society and in business life. And I think that's one of the things companies should look at more than ever before. Because I have a very interesting quote that I brought with me, which is one from Peter Diamandis. And Peter Diamandis is actually one of the co-founders of Singularity University. I don't know if a lot of people in the audience are familiar with what Singularity University is or does. It's not really a university. It's more like, I call it a business school or a place where C-level people can go to actually learn about new technologies, to even play with new technologies and to discuss what will the impact be of those technologies on society and of course their business. Mm-hmm. Yes. It's not just technology as we know it that they play with and discuss over there. They talk about exponential technologies. And exponential technologies are exactly the things that are in the title of this webcast series, which is bots, machine learning, artificial intelligence, but they also talk about 3D printing, nanotechnology, drones. So we could say all the technologies that we read about today, that we see probably also in science fiction movies, that we see already a couple of applications of, but it's still early days. But we try to see, or they try to see at Singularity University, what could be the impact that those technologies will have on business and society in the next 3, 5, 10 years. That's actually what they are doing over there. And the reason why they call it exponential technologies, by the way, is because the adoption of those technologies will go with an exponential curve. It will go very slow in the beginning, and all of a sudden, it will go hyper fast. And that's something that is totally different. We haven't seen something like this before. If you look at the technologies that we have adapted to as businesses in the last 10, 20 years, it's the internet, it's mobile technology. We had quite some time to take action. This time we will not have that amount of time. And this time it's not one technology that is coming at us, it's a whole set of technologies at the same time. I sometimes call it a tsunami of technological change that will hit companies very soon. And you know,
it's already hitting the companies and also the consumers.
Yeah.
But sometimes the consumer's pace is even faster than the way the companies can adapt to it, right?
Sure.
So today, from your point of view, where do you think we are in this exponential curve of adoption as the consumers?
Yeah, I think a lot of people in organizations think that we are at the very beginning. We still have a lot of time to take action. I think if you look indeed at consumers, and especially at consumers in markets that are a little bit front runners. I think, for example, about what happens in China and how Chinese consumers have embraced technology to a very large extent. I think we are at that kind of tipping point almost, where things are about to go really, really fast. So I think there is a little bit of a kind of misunderstanding in a lot of organizations. We have time. But if you look at what's happening in the consumer world, and especially in some advanced markets, you can see that the time to take action is probably now. We are at that point, or too late, or the train will have left the station and you will have missed it. So we are at a very critical point, I think, in history when it comes to the impact of technology on business and society. Yeah.
Technology has always been a very important part in deciding the purchase behavior, in the way we spend, in the way we are confident on brands and so on. But now they play, the technology plays even a more important role. The way it impacts the purchase decisions, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I think we always talk about technology as a disruptor. Technology can disrupt certain markets and certain market dynamics, and that's definitely what we see today. Think about the well-known examples, Uber, Airbnb, and how markets are actually turned on their heads. I think technology is not really disrupting in those cases, but it's actually technology that is used to finally give consumers what they want and give them the experiences they actually are looking for. But indeed, technology can create new experiences, but can put old business models completely on their heads today, for sure. So it's super, super crucial that you pay a lot of attention to what is happening in that space at the moment.
So does that require the companies to make huge investments in technology? Because this comes at the end to the budget discussion, right?
Yeah. Well, I have thought a little bit and done some research around what are actually the things that you should do as an organization. Where should you spend your time and your money on? What kind of plans and strategies should you craft? And I've actually come to 3 things that are important when companies want to take action and allocate resources. I think the first thing is all about we should have more a mindset of experimentation. I think that's truly important. More than ever, companies should experiment outside of their classical R&D programs. I think R&D, research and development, in a lot of big organizations, it's a lab, it's a special team, and they follow a certain process, but it all goes very slow. It takes years before something that comes out of that lab will actually hit the market. If you think about the speed by which the kind of adoption of technology will go, and especially in the consumer world, we don't have the time to follow the old rules of innovation. We should experiment more, even with the technologies that seem to be in their early days, in their infancies, if you want. We already need to experiment with those. You have a lot of people, take a very simple example, bots. You have a lot of people who say, oh, it's still not good enough to use in what I do for the customer. It's still early days. Artificial intelligence, it's still not good enough. It's still not working well enough. Think about smart speakers, for example. How many retailers are already making use of all its possibilities? Not a lot, because they think, oh, we still have time and we will wait until it's good enough and then we will start to use it. And that's old thinking. We already now need to play with it. We need to build prototypes. We need to get it into our fingers. What can those technologies do for us? We need our teams to be ready when it's good enough. Because when will it be good enough? In a couple of months from now, maybe in a year from now. Things go that fast that you cannot lose time by saying we wait until it's good enough. So you need to have that mindset of experimentation, and probably more people in the organization should run those different experiments.
Yeah. And when you say experimenting, I mean, we know several brands, very big brands from very big companies, who are actually innovation-driven brands, where they start with all R&D. It's a great product, it's a great innovation, and it's easier to experiment a product, but it's not as easy to experiment an experience that the consumers would go through. It's not about the product anymore. It's not about a specific touch point, or it's not about a specific service, but the whole experience from start till the end, and even afterwards, is all about experimenting the experience with the consumers.
Correct. I will give you maybe an example of a project that we did for a bank in the UK. We looked at exponential technologies, so literally all the technologies that we just talked about, that we just mentioned. And we looked at how lead-edge consumers, so consumers who are front runners, are using those technologies today in a kind of banking and personal finance context. And based on that, the bank together, we decided which are the technologies we are going to experiment with. What's the 45 degrees where our experimentation will be? And then they started building prototypes, like you said, not to just innovate in a certain touch point, but to innovate the whole experience. For example, what could bots or personal assistants do to banking? How can it change the whole banking experience? How can it even create new value? How can it maybe create new business models or income streams for us? So it goes way further when it comes to customer experience than just how can we optimize this little touch point by using technology. It's how can we create a completely different experience for the customer with a new value, with additional value. Definitely. But it's experimenting, because if that bank would say we're going to roll that out tomorrow, that's impossible. The technology is not good enough and most consumers are not ready for it. But you already need, with the technology that is available now, with the consumers that are using it now or that could be first users, you already need to you need to do first experiments, do first pilots, because in a couple of months from now, probably the technology is good enough and you see that pickup on that exponential curve of adoption by consumers. So it's so important to do that. Maybe a second thing is think about human-machine collaboration in your company. Because we talk about machines, we talk about AI and bots, but there are still humans in our organizations. How are they going to work together to create a very unique experience? Because I've seen a very interesting piece of research done by Quit, which is a very advanced AI company based in Silicon Valley. And they have actually done experiments. And out of those experiments, you can see that if humans and technology work together, they do most of the jobs, or 15% better, than each of them alone. So in terms of creating great customer experiences, you can already see that it's not only about technology, but it's where can technology and the human interventions of staff, frontline staff, for example, create a very unique experience. And yeah.
I think this is an important point because there's this discussion whether the machines will take the place of the humans, which will never be the case. But the example you give, actually machines collaborating with human create more impact for the benefit of the consumer at the end of the day.
Kevin Kelly, which is a futurist, has a very interesting quote about that. He says, it's not a race against the machines, it will be a race with the machines. And I think that's a very good point. And you see it already in some industries where customer experience is extremely important. An example is the hotel industry. One of the hotel chains, new style hotel chains that I really like is Citizen M. It's from origin, it's a Dutch chain, but they are now rolling out in all parts of the world. And they were one of the first hotel chains to combine human and machine. Like they were the first to do self-check-in already years ago. So literally when you walk into the hotel, there are 10 booths, machines actually, and you can go there and you don't need to fill out all your details again, because what you get when booking on their online platform is a QR code. You just scan the QR code, it recognizes you, and in like 30 seconds you get the key to your room. And there was no human intervention. For a hotel chain targeting business people, this is fantastic, because nobody loves to be waiting in line after a hard day at work or working with a client or having a meeting abroad. You don't want to be in line for 10-15 minutes, having like nothing to do, just wasting time. And if you look at the human interaction that you then have with the person checking you in most cases you also feel that they don't like what they're doing at the moment and don't see the kind of added value.
You could still actually have the human interaction, but that would be welcoming you to the hotel and just offering a cup of drinks. So that's different.
That's exactly what they do.
The example you give, I wouldn't only relate it to business people, but I'm thinking about the families that have these kids and waiting in line just for a couple of minutes could also be very frustrating. And this improves the whole customer experience using technology.
And they go pretty far in that. If you call their customer service, it's like a little robot who picks up the phone. It's like and actually the robot says, I'm a robot. I will try to help you. If I cannot help you, you can always push the emergency button and then I will connect you to a human being. And it's fantastic because the robot can answer a lot of the standard questions because they know very well what the questions are that people will ask. But if you push the emergency button faster than in any other case with any other customer service, you have a human on the phone who's totally dedicated. So it's all about asking yourself that question as a company, when we create a customer experience, what can machines do best? And where is human empathy and emotion and the surprising elements that humans can add to the experience, where does that come into the whole story? Because today, I think a lot of staff, for example, in hotels, acts like a robot. And they do things that the robots probably could do better, and they should use more of their kind of human skills, like empathy and surprise. To create a great customer experience. And it's a simple example, but I think if people in the audience think about their own business, they can start to think, what could that mean to us? What can we leave to machines? And what does that change to humans? And how can, if the two combined, how can we create something that's totally unique and different? And the final point is thinking about new business models. I think, like we mentioned in the example of the bank a couple of minutes ago, I think this also opens opportunities to create totally new experiences and maybe new business models or new ventures for companies if you really make use of all the new technologies that are out there. So that are the three things, according to me, that companies should do now. They should think about what are the experiments we're going to do with technology, who's going to do those experiments, what's the budget we have available for that. I would say 10% of your budget, your innovation budget, should probably go in that bucket of experimenting, not for today, tomorrow, but for the day after tomorrow. Think about human-machine collaboration and how can you create unique and very relevant experiences by bringing the two together, and maybe already start to think about the far out future. How can this totally turn around our business and our business model if we make use of all those technologies?
10% might be a good benchmarking, but I would say that 10% is variable depending on the maturity of where that organization is
going.
Yeah, I mean, it could be 90% of your innovation budget to be, or 100% of your innovation budget to be invested in technology other than anything else. So it also depends on the maturity of the organization in that path.
But you see that already, leaving 10% to think about not tomorrow but the day after tomorrow, for a lot of companies it's already hard, a challenge.
It's always tackling with the current issues than looking at the future. You're right.
Good. So maybe we can zoom in for a second on that first aspect, experimentation and foresighting. For me, it's all about the external clock that is ticking faster for a lot of organizations. I'm always like laughing a little bit when I enter a big company, or sometimes also one of our clients. When you walk into the lobby, there are like very big clocks telling you, if it's a multinational, what the time is in all the different parts of the world. And I'm like, what's the relevance of this? According to me, most companies should have like two clocks in their lobby. One is saying, this is how fast the world is moving, and this is how fast we are adapting to the new reality. And I think, unfortunately, in a lot of organizations, more and more you start to see that the external clock is ticking way faster. That some companies, because they are not taking action, start to run behind. So I think it's very important to have a team, a group of people who look at how is technology evolving, how is society evolving, how are customer needs evolving, and what does that mean for our business and our organizations. I think that's a truly important thing to do today. There is that metaphor of the frog and the boiling pot of water. I don't know if you're familiar with the experiment. I would say to the people in the audience, don't try this at home, but
how does it work?
How does it work?
I'm not familiar, and I don't want to know if I should explain this to my kids.
No, I don't think so. I think they would find it funny, but it's a little bit cruel. If you have a boiling pot of water, you take a frog and you throw it in there. What will happen is the frog immediately will jump out.
Okay.
What happens if you have a pot of water, cold, you put in the frog will start to swim around, and you start to heat it. And all of a sudden, of course, the water reaches the boiling point. Nothing will happen. The frog will stay in, and all of a sudden,
this is called adoption.
And that's a little bit, I think, what's happening when we look at the change in society, the change in the world of technology, the change in the world of consumers. A lot of companies, without sometimes even realizing it, are the frog in the second pot of water. They are the frog that stays in. They think it's going slow. It will take a while before this technology or this new customer demand will have an impact on what we're doing. They are or underestimating the change, or they are just not having the teams or the means to capture the signals that tell you what to do next and what to do in the long run. So I'm afraid that a lot of companies aren't looking enough at the change both in the world of consumers and in the world of technology, and are a little bit that frog in the boiling pot of water.
Yeah, all the things that you say are very relevant, and I also believe that it depends a lot on the leadership and how the board thinks about it. Because if the CEO is a role model, then the employees will follow the CEO. So that's why leadership plays
a very
huge,
important role,
impactful role in adapting to the technology.
Definitely, for sure. And a nice example, a very recent example, there was a change in leadership at the top of Heinz, the ketchup company, the food company, CPG company. And very recently, the new CEO did some kind of public announcements towards the world, and especially I think towards shareholders, what his plans are. And he talked about actually two very important things that we will also touch upon in this presentation. We should be better at foresighting, he said. We should try to see where is the food category going, what is it that customers demand from us not only today but also tomorrow and in the day after tomorrow. And we should become better at turning then those insights and foresights into great products that are different and that deliver a different experience to our customers. We should be more creative. That's actually what he said. We should be more creative in using all the possibilities technology, but also advancement in science has to offer. We should be more creative in how we do advertising. We should use technology also in that case in a different way. And we should become better at what's next. What is the thing that we should do next? And I think there leadership plays a very important role. I think if the CEO of a company says that, but also lives up to those things himself or herself, I think that's a very important signal to the rest of the organization how important it is to be busy with the future. Because in a lot of organizations, it's especially the ones that are on the stock exchange, it's all about the figures that we will deliver the next quarter, and too little probably about what will we do in 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 years from now, and how will we future-proof this business and this organization.
But understanding consumer needs have the most impact on delivering the business results and growing your revenue. Yeah. I've just read I think it was in July, August, Harvard Business Review, an article that the consumers who shop online spend, I think 35-40% more on healthy choices. Yeah. When they're shopping online for food. Yeah. So this is such an important insight for a food company that if they invest in online shopping, that means that they have the potential to make 30-40% more revenue because they have a healthy choice that they offer online. So it all starts with understanding the consumer behavior and also adapting your business model to it.
And I think it's twofold. It says how important the digital channel is becoming for those type of companies. But probably if we look at the people that are shopping online today, probably they are a little bit younger. They are already, in terms of health consciousness, a little bit more advanced than the mainstream of society. So it's also a signal about what will happen in the near future. So it's not only a signal, e-commerce and the digital channels become more important. It also tells you already something about the future generation and how will they spend their things. And if you're a company like Heinz or Mars, who's creating chocolate bars and candy bars, that should ring a bell and say, well, what does this mean for the future of our business? And the same with companies in banking. They should think about new generations and how their kind of behavior is different and what the kind of experiences will be that they will be looking for in the future, what the kind of added value will be that they will expect from their banks. So it's about being busy with the future. And once you have, let's say, those foresights, once you have decided what path will we follow, where will we innovate, what do we believe is a future we should work on or should anticipate, then for me it's about experimentation. Then it's for me around starting to create prototypes. A nice example, I think, and in terms of customer experience and new business models, I think it's a fantastic example, is what IKEA is doing currently. We all know IKEA and their model that has been successful already for decades. I think it's the first time in history that a company like IKEA starts to see that there could be certain kind of trends that works against the business model that they have, which is gigantic mega stores near big cities, but out of the city and closer actually to people living on the countryside than people living in the inner cities. What they have done is two things. They have looked years ago already at the trend of people, and especially young people, moving to cities. I think the majority of the world population now is living in cities, and especially young people are living in cities. Those young people also, like we just mentioned, shop more online. So they have started to pilot with their kind of urban store concepts, where in the big shopping streets, they have like smaller stores where you can just touch and feel the products, but you cannot take them with you.
Purchase the
you
product.
cannot
you can
purchase
order.
it. You can order, and it will be delivered at your doorstep. That's like, how can we future-proof the business model that we have for what is going on in the world around us? Now they are even thinking about conscious consumption. So the fact that we all start to think more about what we consume and what the impact is on society, on our planet. Again, it's only a minority of the, unfortunately, a minority of the population who already thinks like that. But if we look at trends, if we look at how things are evolving, probably this will become more mainstream in the years to come, especially when we start to see what conscious consumption can do for us as human beings and for our planet. So they are now thinking about a new pilot, which is like, can we, instead of selling furniture, create some kind of model where people can rent furniture? Furniture as a service, if you want. You rent it. It's not a throwaway product anymore, which is sometimes what young consumers say about IKEA. I don't buy IKEA because it's throwaway stuff. Mm-hmm. It's not good for me. It's not good for our planet. So that's how companies can future-proof their business. And technology plays a role in that, but it's not the only thing, of course.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's car sharing. Why is there not furniture sharing?
Yeah.
I would like to remind the audience that you can ask questions if you have any by typing in the chat box, and when it's the right moment, I will refer the question to Tom. So please participate if you have any questions.
Yeah, and maybe also a question to the audience in your organization is there already that kind of mindset of looking at the future, of trying to get to foresights and use those foresights then to experiment and to do pilots, to look at what could be our next kind of experience that we create for customers, what could be our next business model? Are you already in your organization looking at the future? Are you serious about that? And are you using those foresights then to start to experiment and pilot? Are you actually future-proofing your business and your customer experience? Yeah, very interesting.
That's a good question.
Let's see if this is already something that plays in the organizations of our audience. Yeah.
Okay.
I think the second thing, zooming in on the second element, what can technology do for a great customer experience? What is the customer experience that consumers ask today, and what's the role of humans and machines? What we see in all types of research that we do a lot of research. We are having that constant, let's say, finger on the pulse with what happens in the consumer world. And we see actually that when it comes to customer experiences, customers are looking for experiences that are effortless, frictionless, proactive. Actually, customers expect that when they interact with an organization, that technology will help to make that a very easy and smooth and seamless kind of experience. The other thing is that they even start to expect that a company is offering what they need without them even asking for it. So that's going even beyond. That's going the extra mile, if you want. And a nice example, I think, of the first one, an effortless and a very frictionless experience, is a very simple example. It's the Push for Pizza app, and it's an application created by a pizza delivery company. And the whole insight behind it is, if you order a pizza, in 9 out of 10 cases, people order the same one. They have a favorite pizza. The occasions and the locations where you are when you order a pizza are in most cases also the same. So the pizza should go to the same address in most of the cases. And most people today don't like to have like all the kind of juggling around with coins and money, so they want an easy way to pay the pizza delivery boy. And I once had a conversation about this with a group of young girls, and they said yes, because the pizza boy only looks very handsome in the movies and not in reality, so we don't want him to be in the door for too long. He can go. So that are the three elements that are actually in the app. When you download the app, you tell what's my favorite pizza, where do I normally eat pizza, and you give them your credit card details. From that moment onwards, the only thing you should do is push the one button that is in the app. So the app is not very complicated. It's literally one button. And once you push the button, you can be sure that 30 minutes later, the pizza will be delivered at your doorstep, and the pizza boy or girl will be gone also in 30 seconds. This is the kind of experience that people are looking for. It doesn't cost us any effort. If I look at my personal kind of experiences, I do a lot of hotel bookings, and I always use booking.com. Why? Because they guarantee me, or that's what I believe, that I get the best price. And secondly, that's the only website, hotel website, that can guarantee me that in 2 clicks my hotel is booked. Even when I need a very specific hotel and I know that's the hotel I want to go to, I don't go to the website of the hotel itself. I go to the website of booking.com because I know there I can do it in 2 clicks. I choose my date, I choose my hotel, and I click yes, and everything is being booked and being paid for. So why is booking.com getting a lot of my money when it comes to hotel bookings? Is it because they are better? No, because the experience is effortless and frictionless. And that will become the norm. You see, we do a lot of e-commerce research. And what we see is that if you need to do too much effort to buy something, people start to think, do I really need this? Mm-hmm. And some people just say, well, maybe I don't need it. Maybe it's not worth all the effort that I'm doing. And you see that the e-commerce websites that are winning are the ones that make the buying experience and the shopper journey effortless and frictionless. And that's so important, I think.
I see. We have a privately asked question coming from an audience member. What are the biggest mistakes made with utilizing chatbots in customer service?
Yeah.
What are the mistakes that are made in?
It's a very interesting question. One of the biggest mistakes, according to me, is when you try too hard to let a chatbot mimic the interaction with a human. Because that seems to be the dream we are after. A chatbot should feel like a real human that we are talking to. I had a very interesting discussion last week in Germany, in Frankfurt, with a professor specializing already, as he says himself, since the beginning of artificial intelligence, and his take on this is AI and bots will never be able to mimic human interaction. There will always be differences, and especially nowadays, the technology is not perfect yet. It's the first the first version, let's say, of it, and you see that too many people try to make it feel like it's a human. But we are not there yet, and we will probably never get there, according to the professor I talked to. So what some companies do very smartly is they say, we have a robot. Here is our little robot.
Yeah. So don't expect it to be a human.
Yeah, don't expect it to be a human. It's a robot. So I think that's the trick. Let the robots be robots, and also tell to your audience that it's a robot, and let the humans, and that's the other thing you should do, be more human. And don't feel like a robot, or don't act like a robot.
Actually, you answer the question in my mind partially. What's the role of humans in creating a great customer experience in a world of AI and bots then?
Yeah, humans should add value. Humans should add emotion. Humans should add empathy. Humans should add surprise and creativity. I think in today's world, data And technology is an enabler, but what still drives a great customer experience, a memorable customer experience,
still the human touch.
Is the human touch. It's the empathy, it's the creativity, it's the surprise. I have a little story about that. I recently did a business trip to China, and on my journey, I had to do a lot of things in terms of transportation. I had to take, of course, a plane, but also use the local transportation system. I even had to take a boat. And I was like, this will be a little adventure. It wasn't, because technology made that my whole kind of trip was very effortless, frictionless. So it was a smooth experience. And in the beginning, that's very interesting, because you think, wow, look at what technology can do, and look at how advanced Chinese society already is in embracing technology. Fantastic. And I even took a lot of Instagram pictures of the facial recognition things and stuff like that. So I call that an Instagrammable experience. But after a while, I was getting a little bit bored, because what they sometimes do too much, not only in China, but in a lot of organizations where technology comes in, is replace the human element with the technology. And that's, I think, the mistake you can make also with bots. Don't let bots take over everything, because it's still, I was missing in my whole China experience, in my whole journey there, in my customer experience as a traveler, what I was missing was from time to time that human empathy, a little surprise from staff. And the thing is, today, a lot of staff, especially in everything that has to do with hospitality, they don't have time to smile at you, to have a little conversation with you, because they are busy with doing things that actually, or maybe technology could do better. And that's the whole point for me. Bring the two really together. Use technology for what it's really good at. And Jack Ma from Alibaba has a very interesting said something very interesting around that at the last World Economic Forum. He said, humans should focus on the things that machines cannot do. And I think that's exactly what it is. We should focus on the things that machines cannot do and bring the two together. And in my example of Citizen M, when you pick up the phone, when the customer experience picks up the phone, it's the robot that picks up the phone. He tries to help you, or she, I don't know what the gender is, and then it's a human being that is helping you with the more complex questions. And they have time because the robot is doing the other things. And that's how we should look at it. But let the robots be robots and let the humans be humans. Don't try to let robots mimic the complete kind of human experience, because they will never be able to do that, because they don't feel. And that was the point the German professor was making. Robots don't feel, so they can never give you that kind of element of empathy, emotion, surprise that is creating a memorable experience.
I see. So from your point of view, can you give any examples of companies that use extreme creativity to leverage the customer experience, to enhance the customer experience by leveraging technology?
Yeah.
I mean, the examples you give are from big companies, which everybody's aware, but are there also like small local players who really create, which I'm sure there are, a great consumer experience by using technology, which is quite creative?
Yeah. Of course, the examples that I'm giving are from large companies, because they have more budgets to do these kind of things. But I think it's all about using your creativity and do small experiments. You don't need big budgets to actually start. Talking about chatbots, today there are so many platforms that you can use, and you can build your first chatbot, even without understanding and knowing coding languages. So it's so easy to get started with a little bit of time and a little bit of budget with everything that is available. And the most important thing here is it's not about technology, it's about creativity. Because you don't need to master everything that has to do with how to program a chatbot. Because the best chatbots are not the ones that are very advanced in terms of the technological features. It are the ones that can, with a lot of creativity, surprise you. And that's the very important thing. Technology is secondary. It's what's the kind of language that the bot is using? What's the personality of the bot? How will it be scripted to have a very interesting conversation with you? That's more important than the technology.
Interesting.
So creativity is probably very important in today's business environment.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We continue.
Yes. So this was the example of the Push for Pizza app that we just discussed in creating.
There will come a day when you will choose the person who will deliver your pizza.
It
could be a robot.
Yeah. Maybe that could be a kind of co-created product between this company and Tinder. Who knows? Where you can have a date with the pizza boy or girl. And then the final point that I wanted to make is around longevity of your organization. Like we already said before, companies should be more busy with the future. They should think about what's next, not only tomorrow, but also in the day after tomorrow. And you can already clearly see that exponential curve that we talked about in the very beginning is at work. Because there is a study that looks at the lifespan of an organization and a business model. And what they found is that in the 1920s of the previous century, in the 20s of the previous century, there was around 68 years. So you could survive with one business model without changing anything for 68 years. If you look at that number today, it's 12 years. Last year it was 15. So you see actually how the time that you have to reinvent your business, to stay relevant if you want, is shrinking. And it's so important to be in touch with the consumer world and with the world of technology. Keep an eye on that. Experiment, like we just mentioned. Think about what will machines do, what will humans do, but also think about the element that we just touched, which is creativity, to differentiate yourself. I think next to understanding what consumers want today, what they will want tomorrow, and in the day after tomorrow, understanding where technology is today and what it can do for your business tomorrow and in the day after tomorrow to create unique experiences for customers. The other kind of skill companies need today is creativity, and extreme creativity. We just mentioned it. It's not technology, it's probably what you do with the technology to create relevant customer experiences and how creative you are to create something totally unique that the others don't have. That is far more important. There is a study recently done that shows that the companies who are, when we measure creativity in a company, the level of creative thinking that is in the human capital of a company, when we measure that the top 25% of companies that are extremely creative, that there is a correlation with the top high-performing companies when it comes to revenue and revenue growth. So there seems to be a correlation. If you're a creative company, you are also performing well. And I think it's a little bit like a magical triangle. You need to be in touch with the world of consumers. You need to be in touch in the world of technology and the changes there. You need to use technology to create unique experiences for your customers of today, but also of the ones of tomorrow. But you also need the creativity, because the way you will use technology to serve the current and the future needs of your customers will be different. Should be different from what your competition is doing. You need to find your unique kind of angle. If you talk about chatbots, what will, in the future, if all banks will use personal assistants and bots, how will Bank A's bot be different from Bank B's bot? That will be creativity. How are we using creativity and technology to serve that human need, that customer need, in a totally unique way?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, in my opinion, the companies also need to be creative to find ways to disrupt their own business model.
Yeah.
Because if they are that creative to find a disruptive model for their own business model, then they will be ahead of competition. If they don't do it, competitor will come and disrupt their business model. So creativity also works in that sense, not only innovating new products and solutions, but it's like, how do I disrupt my business before the competition comes and disrupts it?
And it's actually a mindset that a company should have. If you look at Facebook, for example, and I don't see enough that they are practicing what they are preaching, but when you come into Facebook as a new employee, you receive like a little booklet in which like they talk about the culture at Facebook. And one of the first kind of sentences in that booklet is, we at Facebook will be the ones that disrupt Facebook. We will invent the next Facebook. Until now, they especially bought the next Facebook and acquired them, but that's a little bit the philosophy. We are going to be the ones that will disrupt our current business model and the current value we are delivering for customers. But that's easier said than done. Although it's the first sentence in that little booklet, if you look at Facebook and what they are doing, you can question if it's really happening or not. So it's very hard for companies to do that, but there are all kinds of ways, of course, to make that happen, like starting ventures outside of the organization, having different kind of incubators within the organization, but it's actually very important. You're right. Yeah.
So Tom, what is most important? Is it to understand the technology? Is it to understand the consumer? Or is it to have a deep, in-depth understanding in both technology and consumer? Is there any weight in between consumer understanding and being technologically advanced?
It's a question I get a lot, and I have the feeling that a lot of companies, I call that, are a little bit blinded by technology, in the sense that technology is fancy. It's a sexy topic to talk about. It's something that a lot of people are interested in. It's something that we are confronted with a lot in even the mainstream news. And a lot of companies, it's all about technology is like the holy grail, and we should invest a lot in technology, and that will solve all our problems. I mean, putting it a little bit black and white, but I think at the end of the day, it's all about what is it that customers today, tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow are looking for, and how can we use technology to do that? And I always use a very simple example to explain this, and it's Uber. They are a disruptor to the taxi industry, not because they are a technology player, but because they solve through technology, let's say, the top 3 frictions and issues we have with traditional taxi services. So are they successful in terms of customer adoption because of technology, or is it because of their customer centricity? Is it because they better understand customers, or is it because they have the technology? I think it's first, they are closer to consumers. And secondary, they also understand technology and know how to use modern technology to create a very unique experience for those customers while solving those issues. So for me, it's first the customer, secondary comes the technology, but you should be good in both. And on top of that, you need to have a good
balance. I need to have a good integration of consumer understanding and technology
and not only today, but also tomorrow, because of course, a lot of organizations already have teams being busy with understanding consumers, but they are too much focused on the today. And in the world of today, where things go hyper fast, where we follow that kind of exponential curve, you should have not only a view on today and how can we tweak things incrementally for today's consumers, but you should also already think about what will the customer of tomorrow and the day after tomorrow want, which is something that gets not enough attention in companies today. And the final point that we touched is creativity, because if all companies, sometimes I come into companies and they talk about all the customer intelligence they have. If you have a view on what 2 competitors are doing, I always say, well, they think that they have unique knowledge, but in most cases it's not true. They both know as much about the customer. Maybe it's a little bit different here than here, but all in all, they have the same kind of understanding of customers if they invest enough money into it. And secondary, in most cases, they also have like a view on technology. So it's the creativity. How are you using technology to solve the customer problem, and what's your unique take on it? So if you don't have that third element, creativity, you can also not create a memorable experience. So that's a little bit what the future of customer experiences will hold. And I think it's about foresighting, creativity, and technology. So when those three come together, you can create memorable experiences.
That's great.
And don't forget the human touch. That's also very important.
Okay.
Because that's the cherry on the cake of a memorable experience. And that will always be the case, even when bots and AI takes over more and more of what humans do today.
Okay. Well, thank you, Tom. I was going to summarize what you said, but you put it in a very nice summary at the end that doesn't require any more explanation. It is very interesting, and as I've said, this is the first part of the 3 series webcasts where we will talk about technology, AI, bots, and customer experience. As I've said at the start, I'm leading the Customer Experience Council, which is a peer networking group amongst the senior executives where we discuss several topics impacting the customer experience. If you would like to have more information, please go to the website and reach out to my colleagues on that. We would be very happy if you spend just a couple of seconds to complete the brief evaluation, which will appear now on your screen. And we hope to see you, I think, on October 1st on the second part of the series. Thank you very much. And thank you, Tom.
Thanks for having me.